Oh, hey, didn't see you there. Thanks for taking the time to join me today. I appreciate you being here, everyone. I am Kurt, president and partner at Foundry, and this is Schmidt List, and it is hopefully here to inspire and educate you as an emerging leader in technology and design. So I want to jump right into our big conversation today with Britta, because we're going to talk about self-care at work and why it's important. Because some people have the idea that self-care, the idea of self-care and work together is not a thing, especially if you're a person that likes to work for the weekend. But we're going to be talking to you specifically today about some ideas on ways to make your days better, to make them less stressful. And we're going to talk about all of those different things. So I want to jump right in and say hi to Britta. Britta, how are you today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me today.
I am so excited that you're here. I enjoy all of our conversations, and I'm really excited about today's conversation. So Britta, tell me a little bit about your background. How did you get into the space that you're in, and what has led you to really focus on the idea of this self-care at work piece?
Yeah, so thanks so much for having me again. I am in the marketing and advertising space, and I kind of have started a MBA program that's really focused on social and emotional intelligence, because I've just been a social and emotional intelligence geek, I guess you could say, for a really long time now.
You and me both. Yep.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, that's kind of, I come by the knowledge honestly, and I've used a lot of these skills on my own, even before I've been in this program for social emotional intelligence. And I just want to continue to spread the word to everybody about how they can take care of themselves. So yeah.
That's great. So let's talk a little bit about the idea of self-care at work. So, me, if anybody's actually watching the stream, or if you're listening on the podcast right now, if you can't see, I have a lot of gray hair. So I've been doing this for a long time. And, when I was in my 20s, the idea of self-care at work was laughable. It was, I worked at a large corporate environment, and the only time I got in trouble if I wasn't in my seat by 8:15 in the morning, and then if I left it before 4:30 in the afternoon. That was basically the only time I got in trouble. And during that time, if you got out of your seat, they had it positioned where the manager could literally see down the cubicle walls, so they could see when you were getting up and moving and all these things, because that was kind of the sort of way they managed things. So I grew up in sort of this idea that self-care happened after work, and it wasn't something that we did at work. Tell me, Britta, in your mind, what has changed, in the last how many years, about where it's okay to be talking about self-care at work?
Well, I think especially with COVID, we've seen that your mental health is a part of your whole health. It's not just a separate item.
That's something you just turn on and off.
Right. It's not something you can leave at the door when you walk into work. It's a part of who you are, and it's a part of how you work. And to be the most productive and to do your best at work, you need to be considering all of those factors. So just like you wouldn't come to work, deathly ill, you should probably not come to work in a really, really, really rough place mentally, and we need to learn, if we are in a rough place mentally, we need to learn how to take care of ourselves in that. So.
Right. Because to that point, there is times where people do not have the privilege to not go to work because they're not feeling good,
Exactly.
either physically or mentally. So let's talk through those situations, because sometimes you may show up at work and feeling really great, and then there might be something that triggers you. There might be something that happens during the day. In your mind, sort of, what are some of the first things you need to do? I'm guessing, first of all, you need to recognize that you've been triggered, right?
Yeah,
Right?
absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So we have a couple different strategies,
Okay.
and I want to talk through just like if you're in the middle of a stressful situation, what are some what I would call biohacks, things that you can do immediately in the here and now that can
Yeah.
help you right away. And
If
then we can
something
talk through
jumps up and
later.
bites you, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and then we can
Mhm.
talk through, how you can set that up to be even more successful, in the long term.
Because
But
I think that's really hard, right, Britta? Is recognizing it in the moment, right? Because you're so in, and I've seen this. I've seen this with employees I have, or even myself. In the moment, it's really hard to take a step back from the situation and realize I am in this stressful situation, or right, because you kind of
totally.
got that fight or flight sort of instinct as humans, right?
Hmm.
Is that
Hmm.
I either I'm triggered, so I'm going to lash out, or I'm going to shut down and run away, right?
Right. Right. Yeah. I think just like you're saying, the most important part first is just to notice how
Yeah.
you're feeling, to notice what's going on in your body. And typically, when we're triggered, we can feel it a lot. Anger exists a lot in our hands. So if you notice you're clenching your hands, you're probably in a place that's angry. If you notice, chest tightness or tightness in your gut, all of those are
Mm.
signs
Mm-hmm.
that you are in a space where you're being triggered. And most often, people can notice that before it happens. But
Yep.
typically, if you're not noticing it, just I would say go back to how you feel in your body. You can really trust your body. So if you're noticing some emotions come up in your body, one of the first things that you can do is we call it's a sort of a biohack. And if you're by yourself or you could go to the bathroom, um, it involves triggering your vagal nerve. So your vagal nerve is this nerve that's in the side of your neck, and
Mm.
it's responsible for regulating your nervous system. So
Okay.
down regulating when you're too stressed, and getting you ramped up for needing to be chased by a bear. That fight or flight response. So, yeah, hopefully none of you are chased by a bear
Well,
at
it could
work.
feel like you're being chased by a bear.
Exactly. It could feel that. Exactly. So one of the easiest ways to trigger the vagal nerve to downregulate your nervous system is by sighing. And this sounds very crazy, but it's taking deep breaths and then sighing out loud, almost to the point of embarrassment. So I usually would put my hand on my chest, and you want to
Mm.
feel that vibration of the sigh when you do it out loud. So
Wow.
like really, really
Really
loud.
let it out. Well, and the breathing thing is very common in things like meditation and yoga too, right? So it's not, it's something that's been proven to work, that paying attention to how you're breathing and your breath can be a real powerful way to sort of change your mental state.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And it's just giving yourself that space, like I think when we feel triggered or we feel angry or anxious, we think we need to react right away.
Right.
And we don't need to. We can step back just for a moment, get up, notice what you're feeling, get up from your desk to maybe take a walk around the office. If you're in the office, take a walk around the block if you're at home. And then give yourself the space to be able to, regulate and get back to a baseline. And
Yeah.
yeah, breathing is a great one. Besides just like the deep sighing, breathing in a way that is, um, rested and slow. So usually, typically, that would be breathing in for 4 counts, usually holding it for 2 and breathing out for 8, and just
Mm.
doing that kind of cyclically and allowing your body to kind of come back to a calm state.
That's great.
So yeah.
Well, and I think because let's talk about the other part about that happens when I'm in the moment too, is something I've coached people on, is that if you feel like you're in a safe space, you should tell other people that this is happening to you too. You should be transparent. Now, again, if you don't feel like you're in a safe place to do that, I'm not saying you have to do it, but if you are, it is good to let other people know what you're experiencing and bring them, not necessarily, you might be thinking like, well, I don't want to burden them with this,
Right. Yeah.
and make them
Totally.
think that, but if people don't know that you're experiencing this, they might react to you in a way that could trigger you even further.
Right.
So I think
Yeah.
it's important to, let's talk about communicating. What have you seen? What's worked for you, Britta, in terms of communicating that you're in that space at that moment or feeling that way?
Yeah, and if you don't feel like saying something like, "I'm feeling a little anxious,"
Yeah.
or "I'm
Right.
feeling whatever," you can just say to whoever it is that you're with, you could say, "I just need a minute. Can we just take a minute? I need a minute to breathe. I need a second for space. I need to get up." Or even just say, "I need a bio break," and then go to the bathroom and take care of that. But I would recommend, if you're a leader or a manager in a company or in a division, maybe trying to devise some sort of, this sounds silly, but safe words, for letting
Mm,
everybody know on the team that you're struggling. So you could say something like, "All right, guys, I'm feeling a little flooded right now. I just
mm,
need 5 minutes," or
mm-hmm.
"I'm feeling a little overwhelmed." Or you could say like, "Peanuts, guys,
Yep.
I'm at peanuts level. I need to get out of here. I need 5 minutes."
How did you know my safe word? That's so funny that you picked up on that. It's peanuts or
Yeah,
almonds. They're both delicious. Anyways,
totally.
sorry.
But yeah, I mean, I think supporting an environment as a manager, supporting an environment where people can say, "Hey, I need a second," and especially if you're in a field where you're working directly with clients or customers, you're in a very front-facing role. It's really important to enable your team to be able to step back so that they're not pushing into that reactive space, and they're not kind of passing on that negative emotion to your customers
Hmm.
potentially.
Yeah. Well, again, you're at work, so you're not alone,
Hmm.
and I think the thing that what happens a lot when either myself or I've seen other people get in an anxiety state at work is that if you don't communicate it, you probably are bringing them along with you anyways, right?
Right.
So because
Hmm.
the way you're acting has impact
Hmm.
to the people around you, right? Or the way that you're
Totally.
feeling has impact to the people around you. So if you don't feel comfortable communicating, yeah, it's my suggestion too to maybe exit this situation, but I would also look at this as a regular thing and you constantly feel like you're not in a safe place to talk about these sorts of things. Maybe you need to have a deeper discussion about your role and your job with your boss. It isn't something where I would say, well, this is just me and this is just this job. Don't excuse those things away because it isn't just those things, right?
Yeah.
It could be other things that are contributing to this. That maybe you need to take a step back and take a broader look at the situation you're in, both professionally, right?
Yeah. Oh, totally. Yeah. I did want to mention just one more thing in terms of
Yeah,
like
yeah.
a resource that's helpful in the moment. So there's been a lot of research done about self-talk and how you can give yourself a pep talk. And usually people would say, "I'm," something like, "I'm doing okay," or "I'm safe," or "Everything's okay." But they found that using third person pronouns with yourself and talking to yourself actually has alleviated PTSD in veterans in some very crazy ways, and also immediately downregulates your system. So
Mm,
saying things like, "Britta can do this," Britta is feeling calm," Britta is, so using your own name and talking yourself through a situation, and remembering where you've been able to conquer these types of situations is really, really helpful. So
mm, yeah,
but other than that, I would say as you're moving into your position, I think it's really important when you're looking at your work environment just to think about, where are places and spaces that I've thrived, places and spaces I felt the most alive and the most free and the most
yeah,
in my own energy,
yeah.
and then start to list commonalities. And maybe those places are, um, places outside of work, but there are commonalities in those environments that you would be surprised about. So even things like colors, or being near a window with natural light, or maybe you're in an office that has overhead lights that are, LEDs or something like that. You can,
Soul
yeah.
sucking, UV lighting. Yeah, right.
Exactly,
Oh, I've
exactly.
been
Yeah,
there.
so you can do little things like that you wouldn't even realize just to regulate your environment. So like having a plant at your desk has been proven to add some calm to people. Adding a little lamp that isn't an LED lamp that provides some natural warm light. That's really helpful. Also, too, just surrounding yourself in your space in your office with things that remind you of yourself at your happiest or your best. It's kind of a subtle trigger to your brain to remind yourself that you're in a place that's safe, that
Yep.
you're feeling good, and it's sort of a way for your brain to reflect on that subconsciously.
Yep. It's super smart because if you don't try to be intentional or purposeful with it, and you just let these things constantly be happening to you, it can be really damaging to you long term. And pretty soon it becomes very clear it isn't about the work environment. It's you need to be working on yourself a bit more, right?
Yeah.
And so, that's some of the things that I really tried to spend time as a manager with my employees, is letting them know that this is a safe place to come in and vent. It's a safe place to come. And, if you want to come in and say, oh, I feel like my job just sucks right now. Like it's okay to say that to me, even though I'm your boss.
Yeah.
Because I want to create an environment where you feel, because I don't want it to surprise me later if 6 months later you're like, oh, you know what, I'm quitting because I don't like this place and I never felt comfortable
Right.
telling you the things that I needed in order to make it a better place. And so whose fault is that,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And
True.
I've been in that situation before. I've been in that situation many years ago and learned my lesson that if I didn't, it still will happen. You can't be a perfect manager. It still will happen. You can try to create a safe place, but people, maybe due to their backgrounds or other things, are just never going to feel comfortable bringing that to you. So, but what you want to do is encourage people that, hey, if you're not comfortable talking to me, here's this person, here's HR, here's this person in this other area that has been, culturally in our organization is a very empathetic person that can talk to you about things. Or, there's just different people in your organization. Maybe it's not your boss that's approachable.
Totally.
So I would say that if maybe your boss, you're not comfortable going and talking directly with your boss, try and find some other people in the organization to have a conversation with, because you never know. They might say, oh, well, actually, I've been here for 6 years and they're really good if you talk to them about this.
Right.
And they can
Yeah.
give you some insight, right? So
Yeah.
I think it's important to do that due diligence and get out of your own head a little bit, to see if you can salvage the situation if you feel like you're in a space that isn't cohesive for you.
Right. And to be fair, I mean, it's, if you don't show up to work authentically and really bring your whole self and be who
Yeah.
you are, your work can't be a place where you thrive. So it's essential that you come to work as you are, as a person, full and whole, and that you express yourself. And like you said, if there isn't a space where you feel comfortable expressing yourself, find someone, one person, or even sometimes I use voice notes on my phone and I'll just rant into my phone. But
Yeah.
it's really important to notice when you do express needs, it actually is a gift to your manager because they get to know you better and it
Yeah.
provides an opportunity for them to connect to you. And who knows, maybe there's a ton of other people that are struggling with the overhead lights or,
Right.
struggling with whatever you're struggling with in the environment. And you're the first one to speak up. And then people are like, oh, thank God. Me
Yeah.
too. This
Right.
is
Let me
awful.
jump on that bandwagon. Yeah.
Yeah. And
No, I
even
think that's really
support.
powerful.
Totally.
Yeah, because we see so much in the news about terrible bosses, and it gets so highlighted. Honestly, in my experience, yeah, there is terrible situations and things out there, but it's still pretty rare. So but we can sort of bring this social media and outside world of like these things into our space, and immediately like say, oh, this is just like what happened. I read on the news about this terrible boss or whatever,
Yeah.
and or you might have had a situation at a previous job where you had a terrible boss and whatever. So you're bringing that baggage with you to the new place.
Right.
So back to your earlier point, I think it's important that you also check yourself a little bit and say, is this a real thing that's happening in front of me right now? Or is this something that could be something I brought with me from previous conversations or situations, and it just feels the same, but maybe it's not the same, right?
Yeah, exactly. I think when you're feeling triggered, so, in the moment you're feeling triggered, you downregulate your nervous system. It's really important to reflect back on that and think, okay, what happened that made this, that made me upset? What was it
Mm-hmm.
that triggered me? When have I felt like this before?
Mm.
And kind of trace that back because maybe it isn't like you're saying, maybe it isn't, your boss says a certain phrase or something. Maybe it really isn't about your boss. It's just that you're projecting some past really awful experience that you had with another boss on what's
Yep.
happening right now. And And you wouldn't know that unless you take time to reflect later.
Mm-hmm.
So I love asking myself the question, when have I felt like this before? And just taking time to like think through other situations where I've experienced this and
Right.
other ways that I've dealt with it maybe. So
Right. Because there's different things when you're talking about the reaction you're having and understanding the reaction you're having, because I did an article about this not too long ago about how to deal with a competitive coworker. And one of the things that I talk about in there is first of all, make sure that they're actually competitive. You could be making it up in your head that,
true, yeah.
you know, they could just be a little, I don't know, for lack of a better word, a little bossier than you're used to, or maybe they've just got a higher energy than you're used to. And so it could be just a mixed match of personalities. Maybe it's not truly a competitive environment, but it's not just, we always talk about bosses, but it's coworkers that we're interacting with a lot that can really affect our mental state at work, because we are supposed to be working together as teams. And so if you don't have a good team building sort of manager and you kind of left to your own devices to create the team, that can be really stressful too, right? Because and that's something I've done in the past, is gone to my boss and say, I don't feel like we're working as a team, and I need your help to help us figure out how to work better as a team, you know. And sometimes that's worked. Sometimes they're like, I don't know, you guys figure it out. That's what I hired you for. It's like,
Yeah, no. Yeah, I think just bringing it up, like you're saying, communicating, bringing it up, and just noticing and recognizing too that each of you, you know, your coworkers, your boss, each of you is, you know, different balls of energies that are coming to the situation with your own
right.
histories
Yeah.
and your own situations. So like one thing that's happened to me in the past, you know, when I was at a working environment, was I was feeling really sort of attacked by my boss, and I did the emotional regulation. When did I feel like this before? And I realized I'm bringing to this situation a history from when I was a child. You know, there was a lot of criticism that happened in this specific situation that I remember. And so this phrase that my boss was using kept reminding me of that. And when I brought it up and talked with my boss about it, that was not what they were intending at all. You know, I was totally reading into the situation something that wasn't there. And you know, there's no embarrassment on my end. It's just a part of my history. It's a part of who I am. And it's helpful to voice that, because then I know, oh, actually their intention was really, really kind. And, you know, to try to help me and help me see these blind spots that I was having. So yeah, I mean, it's really important to recognize it's not always about the situation at hand. You might be projecting something from the past, and the same with another coworker. They might be projecting something on you
Exactly.
that has nothing to do with the situation.
Yes,
So,
exactly. Because as humans, we are terrible communicators, and just in general. And you know, almost every problem is a communication problem. So that's where I always coach people, exactly like you're saying, is check the communication first before you check the intention behind the communication. Because I have definitely, as a boss, used words that I didn't think would be triggery, but they totally were, right? So we have this running joke at work where one of the leaders at the organization, whenever they wanted to talk to an employee, they would just put a meeting on their calendar and just say chat. And we used to give him so much crap about it, because we're like, that triggers people. He's like, no, it doesn't. These are adults. They don't, you know. And I'm like, no, like the person who could fire you or give you raises and things like that is just saying chat, right?
giving you a very vague,
Very vague sort of thing, right? You know, because I even tweeted about this a while ago, because I was making fun of him, because I was like, how to stress out your employees in less than a second is slack them. Got a sec? So you have to, you know, and I attribute it to being a good manager is understanding the amount of space you take up as a manager as you move through the organization, and I don't mean physically, I mean digitally, like how your emails get sent and all those things. And I've talked to leaders that are like, oh, I just want to do my job, you know, why is everybody such snowflakes and blah 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 blah. And it's like, that's not the point. The point is you don't understand how much space you take up as a leader. And so when you walk into a room, you wonder why people stop talking, stop communicating, you know, because that's what they've been taught is the right thing to do. When we
Right.
go to school, we're taught to sit in rows, and we have a teacher up front, and keep your mouth shut and open your textbook and do these things. This is translated now into the work environment and has been for years. And the problem that I see right now is that people in the workspace, and especially from the employees up, are trying to break that system and
Right.
say, this isn't the way we want to work anymore. The school system was built to serve the industrial complex, right? To teach people to be good factory workers, as Seth Godin likes to say, right? And so, but most of us have thinking jobs. We have, we're it's not something we're doing with our hands all the time. So because of that, it just seems obvious that more stressful situations will impact our work, right? Because if I'm a woodworker and I'm stressed out that day, it really isn't going to hurt me. It isn't really going to make me not want to lathe a table leg or something,
Yeah, exactly.
But if I have to get up and present, to a client or things like that, it's going to impact me big time.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's so important to recognize, like, you're not a machine, you're a
Right.
human.
Yep.
And, productivity every day, while that is great, it is okay if there are days that you just don't have it in you, because you're a human, not a robot. And
Yes.
as we move into these digital ages and really, explore, AI and things like that, the advantage that you being is that you can think creatively, and you have
Yeah.
capacity and space to think creatively. And to do that, you need to be able to give yourself breaks, be able to, like, refresh your
Right.
mind, refresh your brain. I really like to use this sort of technique called nudges. So it's a research that was done by Richard Thaler. He's a behavioral economic or economist, behavioral economist.
Yeah.
That's the word. And he talks about these small nudges that you can create throughout your day that kind of create these resets. So a nudge is essentially like something that you don't really have to think about, but that tells your brain what to do without having to really think hard about. And so I guess, like, an example of that is, like, in Japanese train stations, they have these, like, they perform safety checks, and when they perform safety checks, they're told to point at whatever it is that they're checking, and they've realized that just the act of pointing, that small nudge, essentially that behavioral nudge, has increased safety by over 80% when they're doing these, like, small checks. So you can do that for yourself. So things like, when I open my door at work, that means that I'm taking a 5-minute break. And you just plan those little things, those nudges into your day, so that you give yourself a chance to reset your brain so you can come back to a space where you're feeling ready to perform your job to the best of your ability.
Yeah. Well, in another thing that you talk about, or that we've talked about before, is planning ahead, right? Not just. So we talked about, like, what happens in the moment. So talk to me a little bit about, Britt, about ways that I can sort of plan my day, because I need. It's not that you need to be on the defensive. I think it is being more, taking more of the, intention, the initiative to plan a bit of a safer day for yourself. So how do I do that?
Well, I would start first just by taking a whole week and just noticing how you feel. How do you feel in the mornings? Do you feel more lethargic in the mornings? Do you feel more lethargic in the afternoons? When you're moving through your day, what are times when you feel like you've worked the most productively and done your best? And just start to notice those, like, environmental things that annoy you. Just take a week and notice them. And then as you've noticed them, start to plan your day, your weeks, with those in mind. So I notice that on Mondays, we usually have a lot of meetings, and I don't do a lot of good creative in-depth work on Mondays. So I make
Yeah.
sure when I'm starting my week out, I schedule mostly meetings on Mondays, and I don't schedule things where I have to be really, really, mentally present or very, like, creative problem solver. I usually do my best deep work in the afternoon. So I plan my day so that I'm doing all that deep work in the afternoon and not in the morning. So things like that, just giving yourself those advantages and understanding how you work and how you function. And two, some people, myself included, might have other adaptations that maybe they're not used to being able to have to ask or being able to ask for help for. So, for instance, a disability like ADHD or dyslexia or
Mm-hmm.
ADD, those types of things, especially when you're going into a working environment, you don't want to hide them. You want to use them, one, to your advantage, but also just be honest about the struggles that you face with some of those issues, and then be able to plan your day and your life around them. So, like for me, I have ADHD. One of the best ways for me to make sure that I'm productive is I use a bullet journal. In the morning, I give myself a list of only 3 things I'm going to do in the morning. I don't give
Mm.
myself a huge long list. I rate those 3 things on a Post-it note, and I keep that Post-it note in front of my face until I finish them. And then I throw the Post-it note away, go back to my journal, and I'll write 3 more things.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm giving myself, because I have ADHD, when it's in front of my face, I will remember it. When it's not in front of my face, I will forget it. So I'm giving myself a cue, a nudge, an environmental cue to help me find a workaround so I can be my most productive self. And sometimes there are productivity tools too that you can use, that can be provided by your working environment. So, for instance, screen readers, that can be a really helpful thing for people with dyslexia, or people who have motor skills. Having a certain kind of mouse might make you 2 times faster at your work, and those are things that you can ask for, or you can advocate for yourself and just get them for yourself. But really, I think being honest with yourself about the challenges that you face, and then planning ahead and planning workarounds so that you feel like you're most supported in your day and as you move throughout the week.
Yeah, I think that's smart. Again, back to the point of under taking time to audit yourself
Mm-hmm.
a bit. I mean, I've done that multiple times, and it's something I would suggest also as you move through your career at different jobs and different roles. You need to redo that audit because they're going
Mm-hmm.
to have different. They're going to tax you differently. Because I know earlier in my career when I had more of a doer job where I was producing all day long, all I needed was a quiet space and nobody to bother me, and I could get a
Yeah.
lot done, right?
Mhm.
And so, as I started the new job, I was there for a few months. I started realizing, the space I'm in is not conducive to that. It's right by a hallway. A lot of people are walking by. They're having discussions in the hallway. It was very distracting. And I just, after a while, I went to my boss and I said, is there anywhere else I can sit, and
Mm-hmm.
because I think I can be more productive. And again, if you're going to your boss or your manager and you're saying these are things that will help me be more productive, and if they don't listen to that, then there's a problem.
Right. That's a
There
bigger
isn't a
problem.
problem. There isn't a. You don't have a problem because you have a need. That's
Mm-hmm.
something
Yeah.
you have to be very cognizant about. Just because you
Mm-hmm.
have a need and other people maybe have seemed around you, because you take cues from people around you, they seem okay with it, but you're not okay with it. You can't be like, well, I'm just odd duck or something.
Mm-hmm.
Back to your earlier point, nobody might have just said anything. They might have just thought that there is no point to saying anything, so I'm just not going to say anything.
Right. Yeah.
So it's these stories we tell ourselves that I think you have to check, because
Mm-hmm.
you might be bringing that baggage from another organization. So, and then when I got into more of a leadership position, just like you, Britta, most of my thinking stuff has to happen in the morning, and most of my doing stuff happens in the afternoon.
Right.
So I try to work with the people around me to understand, like, this is when you want me to be strategic and you need me to make decisions and things like that, let's try to do that before the lunch hour. It's not always going to happen, but again,
Right.
I'm intentional about it. I communicate it, and then that's and so yeah, nobody's surprised if at 4:30 at night we're having a strategic discussion about something that they're going to be like, oh, he seems a little checked out. Well,
Right. Totally.
it's because I
Yeah.
am.
Yeah, and to your point, communicating what your working conditions and what you need with those around you. So it's
Yeah.
super important, to tell you, if you figure out your schedule, like we were saying, you do your deep work in the afternoon. Make sure to tell your employees. I mean, we've all seen that funny meme where somebody puts that sticker on the back of their chair that says, I have no self control. Don't talk to me, or else I can't get anything done. Well, that's a form of self care. It's
Yeah.
a form of self care.
Yep.
Yeah. So
Yep.
So, doing things like that, putting a sign on your door, I'm needing these 2 or 3 hours to make sure that I have this
Right.
space to be able to
Blocking your
finish whatever.
calendar,
Yeah, exactly.
all
Exactly.
that
Yeah.
stuff. Yep.
Mhm.
Super powerful. Again, back to the communication, to help solve a problem, one of the first things you got to do is communicate. That's how you solve problems, especially when it comes to self-care, because sometimes self-care can't be done on your own. You need help with it, right? So if you find that some of the things that we're talking about or some of the things that you're using aren't working, I would definitely suggest to people out there to go and talk to someone, talk to a therapist, talk to someone about these things, because it could be something much larger than your role or your job or things like that, and that need to be addressed. So those things at your role and your job can trigger some of those things. And you could be like me, where you've gone 25 years in your career and you're totally fine. And then all of a sudden anxiety starts showing up and you're like, well, this is something new, but I'll just power through it because, it's never bothered me before. Right. And then you
Mhm.
find, oh, wait, no, I should actually go and talk to somebody about this. So don't take your history either as a
Mm.
sign of whether or not you need additional support to
Yeah,
do this. So,
exactly. And I just want to say this like
yeah,
loud and clear. You are not a burden for having needs. That
right.
means you're a
Yes.
human. Like if you're breathing in and out and you have 2 feet and you walk around with a brain, you have needs. Like
Yep.
you're not a
Yep.
burden in
Yep.
any way.
Nope.
And having needs actually gives people an opportunity to connect with you and to form a relationship with you. So, expressing those needs does not mean you're a burden either. And if someone can't fulfill those needs, say, like you're saying, if a work environment or a boss is choosing not to fulfill those needs or can't fulfill those needs, that has nothing to do with you. You are not a burden. That has to do with the environment. And maybe you're just not in an environment where you can thrive. And I
Right.
think that we need to stop kind of pushing this idea that like we're just at work to survive this 8-hour day and then we go home and we can thrive. No, you deserve to thrive in every environment you're in. And it's
Yep.
up to you, it's up to you to figure out how you do that best. So kind of
Yep.
what we've talked about in the past, you're coming to your boss instead of with problems, you come to them with solutions. So you
Yep.
notice why you're not thriving, and then you can tell your boss, these are the 3 things that I'm going to try to do or that I need your help with to be able to thrive here. And that way you're coming as a problem solver and not sort of a problem giver
Right.
in
Then
that
you can
sense.
work together to solve the problem, because I've definitely
Exactly.
had employees come and say, I don't like Sally. She's mean.
Mhm, mhm,
Okay.
mhm.
What are you doing about that? I can't go and tell Sally to stop being mean. Like, you know what I mean? Like I could certainly talk to her, but she's probably going to say, I have no idea what she's talking about. Right. Or
Right,
whatever
exactly.
the case may be. So do yourself the favor of what Britta's saying here is do some of that self auditing, and then come to the people that can help you create a safer space with some solutions, some things that will
Exactly.
work. And if you're having a hard time coming up with those solutions on your own, reach out outside to maybe a therapist or someone to help you come up with those solutions, because just because work may not be giving you those solutions doesn't mean that they don't exist,
Right,
and they're
right.
out there.
And say you're testing a solution, it's just like any other problem,
Right.
in any other space. You might need to iterate on that solution several
Yes.
times. So you might find a blog that gives you an organization system that feels like it might really work well for you. And you find that there's a couple of things about that system that don't work. Well, that doesn't mean you give up on the system. It means that you iterate. So you figure out
Right.
ways that you can tailor make it to yourself.
Yep.
And don't, it's going to take a little bit for you to figure out exactly how you thrive and how you can really, be your most productive self, but you deserve to take that time.
Yeah. And I would also add to that, be careful with mirroring, right? So we all spend a lot
Mhm.
of time on social media. We all spend a lot of time seeing what other people are doing. And if you're trying things that other people are doing, it's not working for you, it doesn't mean you're a failure, right? So Britta's maybe sitting there talking about bullet journaling and things, and you try it and you're like, this doesn't work for me, I'm hopeless. Like, that's not the case. You just to your point, you have to iterate. And yeah, it's very popular. If you go to Pinterest or Instagram, it's always tons of people with their productivity hacks and all this stuff. And I've been guilty of this in the past. I was like, oh, I'm going to try this. I'm going to go all in on this Pomodoro technique or some crap. And it didn't work. And I'm like, oh, I'm not organized, and I have ADHD, and and then what? Like, I'm just going to have a pity party, and then have to go back to, and then I'm going to have to go back to work. And I'm going to still have to deal with it. So I think it's really powerful. And I want to highlight what you just said, is that don't just hang your hat on one solution.
Right. Yeah. It might take multiple different tries, and maybe melding a couple different solutions together and figuring out, what works best for you. Yeah. And I think the only way that you can be open to that iteration is if you're open to the fact that that you're coming from a good intended place, and that you are ready to be the most productive you, and you're providing that solution for yourself, and you're communicating with other people. People will have a lot less grace for you if you're not communicating. If you're just kind of hanging out in the dark and, missing deadlines and missing tasks, it's not going to go over well unless you're really communicating.
Yeah, exactly. Because I want to again highlight something you just said. Because if you're not telling your own story, people are going to tell your story for you. So if you're comfortable with that, then go ahead and let them tell the story, your own story for you. Otherwise, get out there and tell your story. Share with those stuff. Britta, I could talk to you all day. If I want to connect it to you, and I want to, I follow you. I suggest everybody follow Britta here, especially on LinkedIn. She posts great stuff. If I want to connect with you, where are some great places to find you? Where are you most active?
Yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn. Britta Newly is my name. You can find me there. You can also find me on Instagram. That's more of like a personal thing, but I definitely post lots of these sort of hacks and things like that, social emotion intelligence, things that I'm learning. So LinkedIn or Instagram. Yeah.
Great. Britta, thank you so much for taking the time to join me. I appreciate you, and I appreciate the work you're doing out there. And I look forward to having you on again sometime soon.
Great. Awesome. Thank you so much, Kurt.
Thank you. Yeah, you too. All right, everyone. That's our show for today. I just want to mention before we go, we are hiring at foundrymakes.com/careers. So go and check it out. Our company, we have a lot of safe spaces at our place. So come and meet us and check it out for yourself. I appreciate you taking time out of your day. Take care of yourself. Have a great week. Stay hydrated. We'll talk soon.